He is 99 years old, an old man. More than 2 decades ago, he had uprooted his life based on little more than a promise. He'd packed up his wife, his nephew, and all their possessions and walked with them hundreds of miles to their new home in a land they had been assured was theirs. Let anyone who thinks older people can't change take notice. Now the God who made that promise appears again to Abram. And God says, "I will make my covenant between me and you, and will make you exceedingly numerous." This covenant is not only between me and you, it includes your offspring after you, all of them through many generations. I will be God to you and to your descendants after you. As a marker of this covenant, God gives Abram and his wife Sarai new names, Abraham and Sarah. And God promises again that though they are old, they will have children to carry on the covenant after them. As they do, their son Isaac and his sons Jacob and Esau, and their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren after them. Again and again, at pivotal moments in the life of the people of ancient Israel, God renews God's covenant with them. At least 4 times in the Hebrew Scriptures, God promises Israel, "I will be your God and you will be my people." It happens when Abraham becomes the ancestor of all Israel, when Moses brings the 10 Commandments down from Mount Sinai to guide Israel in its new freedom from slavery, when David becomes king of Israel and builds a temple in Jerusalem, when Israel has to reinvent itself after its exile in Babylon. The covenant is everlasting because it is grounded in God's love for Israel, which never fails no matter what, because love is who God is. At the same time, the covenant is flexible. The foundational promise remains the same. God will be their people, and God will be their God, and the people will be God's people. The way that promise is lived out changes over time. In Moses' day, when Israel is wandering in the wilderness, the people worship God in a tent. Then David builds a temple in Jerusalem, and Israel worships God there. Then, after the temple is destroyed and Israel goes into exile, the people have to figure out other ways to worship and pray. They are still God's people, and God is still their God, even if it looks different than it used to. God's covenant with God's people changes perhaps the most through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The first generation of Christians were all faithful Jews who shared in God's covenant with Israel. And they came to see that in Jesus, God was inviting all people, not only Jews, into this relationship. That's what Jesus was talking about when he shared his Last Supper with his disciples and told them, "This cup is my blood of the new covenant, shed for you and for all." Christians who were not Jewish, including us, can now say that God is our God and we are God's people. We join this covenant through our baptism, when we are marked as Christ's own forever. We recommit to those promises a few times a year, renewing our promise to be God's people as God is our God. The everlasting relationship of a covenant allows us to do daring things. No matter what, we will be God's people and God will be our God. Sometimes God will ask us to accept new challenges, like perhaps moving to a new country when you are 75 years old and becoming a parent at the age of 100. God might ask us to take personal risks or make sacrifices for the cause of justice. Jesus makes pretty clear that he asks us to deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him to our death. It sounds daunting, and it is. Yet we can do those things because God is our God and we are God's people. With the security of the covenant supporting us, we trust that God will give us what we need to do what God asks of us. The pattern of the covenant gives us Christians an enduring and flexible way of being in relationship. If you've been to an Episcopal wedding ceremony, you'll notice that we talk about the covenant of marriage. The foundational promise to love, honor, and cherish each other stays the same, even as it gets lived out differently as life changes. Sometimes couples who've been together for 40 or 50 years will talk about having 5 or 6 marriages to the same person. Their relationship looked one way when they were first starting out. It changed as their careers took off or children arrived. It changed again with retirement or caregiving for parents. Melville and I have been married for 16 years, and I reckon we're about on our 3rd marriage. I find that exciting, that even after all this time, we still have lots of opportunity to continue growing and changing together. God wasn't finished with Abraham in his old age. God isn't finished with us yet either. 3 weeks ago, St. John celebrated our 220th anniversary. And today was our 221st annual parish meeting. As we observed in our anniversary celebrations, a lot has changed since that first service back in 1804. We have several buildings now, all with central heat and indoor plumbing. Women and LGBTQ+ people serve in our leadership. Our ministries have grown and changed as the community of Worthington has grown and changed. But the foundational promise of our covenant remains the same. God is our God and we are God's people. Together, we carry out the mission God has given us to grow, heal, and serve with God's wisdom, love, and joy. We've lived out that mission in so many ways in the past year. We restarted the friendship dinner to provide a home-cooked meal and companionship to everyone who shows up. The seeds planted in our Christian formation for children, youth, and adults bore abundant fruit. Last June, we had 3 teenagers and 11 adults confirmed or received into the Episcopal Church. We blessed longtime staff members Virginia Nussbaum and Kathy Wayhoff as they retired, and welcomed Bella Olmsted and Carrie Traister into new roles at St. John's. When repairs to the plaster ceiling forced us to worship in Kilbourne Hall for 9 long weeks, we weathered it with graciousness and good cheer. A number of people who've been hurt by other expressions of Christianity found in St. John's a place where it's safe to ask questions and disagree with clergy and heal some of the wounds they've been carrying. Our choir's anniversary concert 3 weeks ago was the best I have ever heard them. They show us every week what God's love and joy sound like. I won't recount all the highlights of the past year. I encourage you to read the annual report for that. But it's clear that God's promises are being fulfilled in our midst. We carry that trust in God's promises into the coming year, which is a good thing because we have some work to do. Our current committee structure served St. John's well for a long time. Some committees are still functioning well, but others have pretty much collapsed. Now that we've clarified the mission God has called St. John's to, we will have to discern how to organize ourselves to carry out our mission. We will have to make a decision about repairing, renovating, or replacing our main Chants organ. We've kicked that can so far down the road that we are running out of road. The work of striving for justice and peace among all people is never finished. Jesus needs us to be his heart and hands and ears and eyes in the world now as much as ever. The God who is always our God will continue to guide and give us what we truly need, just as God has done for St. John's since that very first service back in 1804. As St. John's enters its 221st year, the covenant God made thousands of years ago with Abraham continues to ground us. We carry on doing the work God has given us to do, secure in the everlasting and flexible relationship we have with our Creator. As we grow, heal, and serve with God's wisdom, love, and joy, we remain God's people, and God remains our God.